So this is Bran 4. Reaching the Night Fort, Bran recalls the horror tales he's heard about the castle, such as the stories of the Rat Cook, Mad Axe, and the Night's King. Before it was abandoned by the Watch some 200 years ago, the Night Fort had once been the greatest castle along the wall. However, Mira and Jojen are unafraid of the ancient castle. They sleep that night in the kitchens near a seemingly bottomless well. Deep in the night, Bran is woken by footsteps coming from the hall. He awakens Mira and then takes control of Hodor's body as he does when he enters summer. But it is only Sam and Gilly who emerge from the well. Carrying Gilly's infant son, Gilly asks them if they are the ones Cold Hands was set to find, but Bran has no idea what she is speaking of. Mira asks them how they got past the wall, and Sam reveals that Cold Hands had led them to the Black Gate, which only a brother of the Night's Watch can open. Sam describes Cold Hands as dressed in black like a sworn brother, but his skin and cold from his body remained of a white. But Cold Hands could speak. His eyes did not burn blue, and he and his ravens had saved them from the whites. When the Reeds inquire why Cold Hands wasn't with them, Sam tells them that the well was more than just ice and stone. There were ancient spells woven into it, and the wall would not let Cold Hands pass. Jojen tells Sam that Bran is the one Cold Hands seeks. Sam realizes who Bran is, but promises not to tell anyone of Bran's whereabouts on his honor and friendship with Jon. Jojen has Sam bring them to the Black Gate, which is an ancient white weirwood glowing beneath the wall of the Night Fort. The face in the weirwood speaks, and Sam answers by reciting his oath. The weirwood permits them to pass by opening its mouth, and as Bran and the others leave Sam behind, the boy feels a drop of water on him, as salty as a tear. So this is like a massive chapter, and if we get to the point where we have to split this into two, we will do so, which is actually what we did a while back. We did another Bran chapter where we had to split it into, and actually a lot of people left us comments saying they appreciated that. So we'll just
Very cool.
we'll see what happens today. We may have to split this into two, but I mean, yeah, this is a huge chapter. I mean, you've got a lot of moving pieces here, and I think this is one of the things that we talk about with like the Arya chapters, where it's like, oh, this is actually in a way kind of like you see how information is passed, because you've got like 4 or 5 different stories passing through here. On this thing. You've got Sam and Gilly coming back. You've got Bran on his route. You've got Cold Hands, and like Cold Hands now going from interacting with Sam to soon being interacting with Bran. And you've also got the Weirwoods and the mystery that's going on there, as well as like the legend of the Night's King and everything. So like a huge chapter to break down.
Yeah, and also this is probably one of the better examples of why the online community loves to do a little bit of a map out whenever they do a reread, and they literally, I've seen people put maps up on the wall and move characters around as they move during the story. And this would be one of those times where maybe before this chapter you would look at where everyone is and be like, man, Sam and Bran are a little close, like they could overlap, and then they do. So I can see why a lot of the online community has been so fascinated with the idea of tracking the geographical movements of the characters. This is a prime example where it probably pays off really well.
Yeah. I 100% agree. Now, look at even like in the opening chapter here, right? Or the opening paragraph, I should say. It's only another empty castle, Mira Reed said as she gazed across the desolation of rubble, ruins, and weeds. No, thought Bran, it's the Night Fort, and this is the end of the world, which is a really interesting opening line, because as this ends, Bran, he feels the Weirwood tear. Now we're talking about meeting Cold Hands. It is almost like Bran is leaving the world of men and really entering the world of magic.
Fantastic.
I mean, quite literally through a magical door as he is walking through it. So it's not just the end of the world. It's like the 7 kingdoms, and then moving on to the lands beyond the wall. It is in a way also a metaphorical end of the world for him, at least as far as being a not a 3-eyed crow type of thing.
It's the next big step in his journey, right? We're seeing a very downtrodden underdog young fantasy protagonist going on a journey, coming of age possibly, and he has now met Cold Hands, who Bloodraven describes as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And is clearly there to meet Bran and to bring him, right? Do you
Hmm.
think Cold Hands is meant to meet anybody other than Bran, by the way? Like, do you think there's more people Cold Hands is being sent out for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, he meets Sam,
Yeah.
and then Sam goes and meets Bran. I mean, that's one of those. That's one of those like huge mystery questions of we have to go back and read that at the end. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of like certainly Cold Hands movements, but we've talked about this many times before. Is in the event we ever get Winds of Winter and A Dream for Spring, I think we know that Bran is on this journey. So are these little moments that we can go back to and say this is a moment where Bran influenced something in the past that we could see in
Mhm.
at the end of the book, because Bran could still have a moment like we see in season 8, right, when he's doing whatever the hell he's doing when the Night King is approaching him in the TV show, right? Like I thought going into season 8 that I was like, maybe we will get some sort of Bran reset something. And I thought the big moment was going to be, when everybody's crazy theorizing in season 8. I think it's episode 1 or 2 of season 8. I think it's 2, where Jon tells them after Daenerys is like, don't tell anybody that we're related. And then Jon immediately tells Sansa and Bran and everything. I thought maybe that would be the moment that we go back to. Like maybe we get to a moment like we got in episode 3. This is
Mhm.
my thought process before seeing it, before everybody in the world saw it. When the Night King is approaching Bran, I was like, oh, maybe Bran will like go back and be like, nope, we got to switch this. Right. Like that's the moment we need to go back in time, because it caused maybe the army to be split or something. I mean, I thought maybe
Yeah,
we
yeah.
would get something like that. And I
You
thought
thought he
that,
would do anything.
yeah, exactly. And then I don't know what the hell he was doing. Right. And
He's
then
doing an
Ari,
Allison
I
impersonation.
have no clue. I have no clue what he was doing. But that's kind of what I thought. But I still think it's possible that we will see something like that
Yeah.
in the books.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, obviously, there's going to be kind of the hold the door moment. There's going to be uh, other things. I think that the ghost at Winterfell and Theon and the whisperings from the tree. A lot of people have speculated who it is. I mean, I think it's Bran. I think
It
it's
could
Bran influencing him.
it could be.
So I do think that you'll see a little bit more of a um, impactful moment where Bran is interacting with timelines and things will become more clear. And honestly, yeah, this could be one of those moments.
Yeah.
Who
Very,
knows? Is the salty tier Brands?
yeah, I mean that's something we don't I think
Oh, think about that, Matt.
when we think
Oh,
about the weirwood trees and everything.
dude, think about this, right? So if Bran's interacting to the werewood trees and like future Bran is watching, this is the end of the world, right? That's how this chapter starts. And at the end of the chapter, a tear falls, almost like a salty, like a tear. What if Bran's looking back at this moment, knowing it's the moment of never returning? And that from this moment on, everything, you know, spirals out of control. Because I mean, remember his friends, Jojen and Mira, we don't know about Mira, but like Jojen's paced, he's done. So he could be remembering these moments
Mhm.
in the future, and that tear strikes him. I think that that's probably so, at least in the ballpark of reality for the
Right.
series.
Well, it should also be noted that it is a salty tear than salt and smoke, Azor
Oh my
High.
god.
I'm just
Oh
no,
my
I
god.
mean it's one of the things people point to as a potential
Okay.
as a potential for Bran, because he's brought up. And then a lot of it also ties into, this Nisa story, right?
Mhm.
Nisa's cry means tears, right?
Mm.
Uh, and then Bran passes under this thing. I mean, the answer is they say salt and smoke is literally like the Lightbringer prophecy, but remember they could be two somewhat different things, right? Like the the three dragons and all that stuff doesn't necessarily mean that the three dragons ties into Azor High, right? We
It could
like
also be wrong.
it could be, yeah, but sometimes it's like when you're looking at these theories and everything, those are like connected, but it doesn't necessarily mean they are.
Yeah, they don't have to be, and also we have to leave room for the prophecies to be misinterpreted over the years and passed down. Like everything we're told is not always true, so there's that to play with.
Yeah.
What? Here's a question for you: why do you think Jojen and Mira were like not afraid of the castle? Like Bran obviously sees this as a huge deal. But is that a testament to how weird Jojen and Amira's life is?
I mean,
Like,
it could just be something as simple as they're just so focused on their mission.
okay. And Bran's a little more aware then.
But at the same time, I mean, that goes into like Howland Reed stuff where he has all this chronic men magic. And is this not surprising to them? Like, I mean, if you grow up around, you know, I mean, like, it's not weird for people. Like, you see
That's what I'm saying. Like, they've seen
like,
some crazy shit.
right. Like even look at the show, like the scene in the show where they go and grab the white and they take it to Cersei. Like the look Cersei gives it compared, and everyone else gives it compared to like John and the people who captured it, who are like used to seeing these things.
Yeah.
Totally different. Right. I mean, like, you know, as they're all seeing it, or anytime you see the dragon and people are like, oh my God, because they've never seen it. But you know,
Right.
Daenerys sees them all the time. So
yeah. It's like
yeah.
Jim Cornette talking about if you walk
I
out
mean,
of your front door and see an elephant humping a giraffe, the first day you see, you're like, oh, and then by this day 7, you're like, would someone tell them to move? I need to get
right.
out of my driveway.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of lore dumping in here, and a lot of so even in this, man, this, I mean, this is just the first few chapters here. So Bran wasn't so certain. The Night Fort had figured in some of Old Nan's scariest stories, and here it was that the Night's King had reigned before his name was wiped from the memory of man. This is where the Rat Cook had served the Andal King, his prince and bacon pie, where the 79 sentinels stood their watch, where brave young Danny Flint had been raped and murdered. This was the castle where King Sherritt had called down his curse on the Andals of old, where the Prentice boys had faced the thing that came in the night, where the blind Simon Star Eyes had seen the hellhounds fighting. Mad Axe had once walked through these yards and climbed these towers, butchering his brothers in the dark. All that happened hundreds of and thousands of years ago, to be sure. And some maybe never happened at all. Maester Lewin always said that Old Nan's stories shouldn't be swallowed whole. But once his uncle came to see his father and Bran asked about the Night Fort, Benjen Stark never said the tales were true, but he never said they weren't. He only shrugged and said, we left the Night Fort 200 years ago, as if that was an answer. Now, we're also bringing up Benjen here, and then we will bring up Cold Hands. And we're talking about like the stories and are they true? Are they not? Right. Which maybe Benjen's story will never get an answer. Maybe is Benjen Cold Hands, which, you know, George has said in the thing he's not, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we will ever get the answer to that story.
Yeah, that's true. So we talked a lot about Cold Hands whenever he ends up meeting Sam, and we made that short and put it out on social media where I was like, I'm saying it now, Dunk the Tall is Cold Hands. And a lot of people are like, how would that even be possible? And I'm like, well, I said it in the short if you had listened. But secondly, I know it's improbable. I know it's probably not true. What I really think, like if I'm not just having fun talking to my friend about A Song of Ice and Fire, like I don't think we'll ever know who Cold Hands is. I don't think that's a question that needs an answer in a series that has a lot of questions that need to be answered in 2 books. I don't think Cold Hands' origin will ever be revealed. And I actually do not believe we'll ever see Benjen Stark again. Personally, I don't think so.
Yeah, and those 2 things could be don't necessarily have to be connected.
Right? I don't think they are.
We could find like maybe we find remnants of Benjen, like we find like his like there's like specifically someone is like this was Benjen's sword, like with his cloak and you know some other things, which that would also mean maybe he's not Cold Hands because Cold Hands is wearing all of that stuff, but maybe he's wearing a different set. I don't know, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but I mean, or maybe you find like somebody else's body and you find like a sword that like this is specifically Benjen's sword or this is his horse or any artifact that specifically ties it to Benjen. So like we could perhaps find out that Benjen died or or he leaves a note or any of that stuff. So like we could get closure on him without it necessarily also telling us yes or no he is or is not Cold Hands in the story. Regardless of what George has said outside of the story.
Yeah, obviously we have confirmation from George's notes to his editor that Benjen is not Cold Hands, but you're right in the context
but it doesn't,
of the story, you're free to think that.
but that note still does also not change the fact that like Benjen could now be cold hands. Like he doesn't, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like if Bran is now, he's no longer Bran, he's the three-eyed crow.
Oh, I feel like with his editor, he would have been
I
like,
know, which is
I don't think he would have kayfabed her. I think he would have
right,
let her in.
which is the pushback on that. But okay, so some other things that were brought up here. I want to bring this up to a little bit. Danny Flint. She's actually kind of a pretty interesting
Danny,
story.
you say?
Danny Flint, and she comes back up a couple times. But essentially, she was this girl from House Flint. She dresses up as a boy to become a member of the Night's Watch.
Mulan?
And there's a story. There's a song about her that is said, and it's a sad and pretty song. You know, this girl dresses up as a boy to become the Night's Watch, ends up being raped and murdered by the Black Brothers. In some versions of the song, her ghost still walks the night fort, and it's brought back up again in A Dance with Dragons, in which Wyman Manderley asks Abel to sing it at the wedding of Ramsay Bolton to Arya Stark, right? The fake Arya. So it is brought up again. But and then later John asks Mance Rayder if he's familiar with the song. But I mean, it does pop up a few times, and some people have even gone to say like, well, maybe she's the inspiration for Nissa, and try to blend some of these stories together.
Yeah, that's a pretty grim. Like I know we talk about how dark Song of Ice and Fire can be. That's one of the darker tales, I think. I think of Ramsay's mom, and then I also think of this as like two of the darker pieces of lore that we get in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll bring this up because I know we have a YouTube video on it. I think it was back like Ez and I did or maybe you and I can't remember. I know we have one on YouTube. And we talked about it previously where we did like a dedicated episode to this whole theory. But I do want to dive into her story a little bit here because I have a Reddit post saved where somebody talked about it. So they're saying Danny Flint is amongst the category of legendary figures of the North who the singer and song tales are about. Like, you know, she's in the same category as Simon Star Eyes, the Night King, Mad Axe. Curiously, of the same legendary figures of the North that also revolve around the Night Fort, you know, which is the Rat's King, all those people we mentioned earlier. But hers is, you know, pretty scary, right? So some people are saying that actually what's kind of interesting is that it's in a way, it's kind of similar. They're making comparisons to her story and Lyanna Stark, right? Because Lyanna Stark perhaps dresses up as a boy like the Night of the Laughing Tree. So Bran brings up Danny Flint and later in a vision confuses himself and Arya for Benjen and Lyanna. Wyman brings up Danny Flint at a wedding of Ramsay and Jane Poole, pretending to be Arya. And then Arya, who Ned Stark often compares to his actual Arya Stark, who Ned Stark often compares to his sister Lyanna. Jon Snow brings up Danny Flint while catching two wildling girls pretending to be boys. And well, you know the whole story about Jon Snow and his relation to Lyanna Stark. Every time Danny Flint is brought up, we're made to be reminded in some aspect to Lyanna Stark and the story of the Night of the Laughing Tree. It's all but spelled out for us that Lyanna was probably the said night. And I can read this: Storm of Swords, Bran 2. This goes back to when we did another split episode with Bran because it was so big. We had to split up like all the stuff with what was actually happening. Then they go into the full Night of the Laughing Tree story.
Yeah.
Whoever he was, the old gods gave strength to his arm. The Porcupine Knight fell first, then the Pitchfork Knight, you know, it goes on. You know, and then folks cheered lustily for the Night of the Laughing Tree as the new champion was called when his fallen foes sought to ransom horse and armor. The Knight of the Laughing Tree spoke in a booming voice through his helm, right? And then, you know, they talk about teacher squire's honor, that they should be ransom enough. And so the little Chronicsman prayer was answered by the green men or the gods or the children of the forest, who can say? So that theory, we don't have to go on all that, but it suggests that Cold Hands could actually be Danny Flint because we don't know anything about this character other than the fact that
oh, I like that. That's wild.
Yeah, so that's one I would love to come back to because it's like it's a really big big theory, but
Oh.
there it is a member of the Night's Watch who is like raped and murdered. I've also seen some theories where people say that perhaps after she's raped and murdered, they like give her to the weirwood tree.
So,
and like, because remember sometimes they talk about like there's like stories of people who like to feed the weirwood trees people, or maybe they
right.
eat people, which is why they cry blood and
Oh
all
my.
of those things. Or maybe she is part of the weirwood tree or something and she's the one crying. I mean, it's pretty
So,
crazy. And that we haven't even got into like the Night King connections. That's why this is probably gonna have to be a 2-part episode.
so here's another thing. We know that Lyanna's story can't, like, in the actual Song of Ice and Fire books, is that she was taken and raped by Rhaegar, right?
Exactly. There's a
And
connection
but it
there
wasn't
too.
true.
Yeah.
At least that's the speculation. We believe that that is not the case, right? Is there a chance that Danny Flint's story is also incorrect?
It could be, because they even say here, Bran says, well, one, old Nan's stories might not be true. And then he questions Benjen about it. And Benjen says, they may not be. They may not be.
So maybe we end up learning more about Danny Flint's story. I don't know exactly how. This whole
She's
idea that Danny Flint is cold hands, though, I really like. That's kind of
right.
interesting.
And maybe George introduced this character, Cold Hands, who we've seen before. And then he's come up with this character, Danny Flint, because she doesn't begin to start showing up until like now.
Right. Right.
However, she could be like, I think when you just think about a girl entering the Night's Watch, right? Like Arya comes to mind. However, there is another girl that also looks kind of like a man, especially in the book, that is also super tall and super athletic, and it maybe Danny Flint is more like Brienne of Tarth
Right.
than like Arya.
But what if Cold Hands is Brienne from the future? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I know. But I guess I'm just saying. So we already have there's another characteristic
Yeah.
in which because we've talked about the possibility of it being Sir Dunk the Tall, because we're thinking this big, huge guy, which is how Cold Hands is described.
Yeah, and like a misconception that instead of frostbitten, the hands are burned from a summer hall and whatever. I mean,
Correct.
it's
Yeah,
fun.
certainly. But Danny Flint might not be this like young, attractive woman. I mean, she dresses up as a boy. Maybe she is more like a Brienne of
Yeah,
Tarth, like a
sure.
big, strong woman that has some boyish features.
Yeah,
And that's why she joins the Night's Watch, because Brienne is very similar. She
yeah,
wants to be a knight because she's big and strong. I mean, it's kind of really the opposite of Arya, where I mean, Arya is a
yeah.
little bit tomboyish, but she's short and young, and I mean, she wants to do it just because she trends more that way. Whereas Brienne, what else is she gonna do?
I mean, is there a chance that also, like, thinking about Danny Flint, and I need to look way more into this, by the way, because this is
Yeah,
like this is
bro,
this is
it's
fun.
a
Like, I hadn't really thought about this.
yeah,
So
it's a really small character who only shows up a few times, but every time she shows up, there are a lot of connections to like Lyanna
right.
and
So two things here. What if Danny Flint was pulled north to the wall by Bloodraven, just like Bran and Jojen and all and Euron, right? That could absolutely be the case.
but she's real quick. I think her story is like hundreds of years ago.
Right, but, like, the three-eyed
Right. It could
crow would
be
still
right
exist.
throughout
Like,
history.
yeah, like,
Yeah, yeah,
whoever the three-eyed crow, it doesn't have to be
yeah.
Bloodraven. I'm just saying, like, the three-eyed crow, whatever this thing is, this
Right.
entity that relives itself.
Or perhaps a brand that exists in all these
That's what I'm
different.
saying. Like, we don't know where the boundaries are and when is who doing what,
Certainly.
whatever, right? So I was thinking about that, but also, who's to say that maybe Danny Flint did not actually end up killing these brothers that were trying to harm her? And it is so embarrassing for the watch, because remember, they used to actually be kind of a prestigious thing. Like, a lady came up here, duped us, and then defended herself and killed a bunch of us. Like, what if they changed the story to make her seem like weaker? You see what I'm saying? Like,
Right. Like
they almost
she's
yeah.
the victim and not the other way around.
Right, right. Like, what if that's the case? I mean, there's so many things that we could run, in circles about, but I just like to put ourselves and whoever's listening to this and rereading with us, like, in the mindset of just like questioning pretty much everything we're told, because it is definitely George's intent, I think, to play with preconceived notions or like legends over time.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, because she's only brought up in 3 chapters, but each of the chapters in which she is brought up, it has to it deals directly with somebody whose like identity is in crisis, right?
Mm,
So she's brought up in the Dance of Dragons, chapter 37, Prince of Winterfell, which is the Ramsay marrying Arya Stark, which is actually Jane Poole.
right.
Right. And then also this Bran chapter, in which you're already starting with like Bran is now on the verge of shifting between man and legend, essentially, as he's
Yeah.
quite literally passing through a magic door into perhaps a magical kingdom,
A new
essentially,
realm.
right? A new realm, exactly, quite literally a new realm. Yeah, I mean, and then the other one is a John chapter, which I'll have to look up exactly what's going on there. But again, it is also brought up with like Lyanna and those connections as well. Yeah, the John chapter, let's see, chapter 58. Tormund Giantsbane, along with 3,000 wildlings, passed the wall at Castle Black. So it is another one in which you are going through the wall, right? This time it's going the opposite direction.
Man, Danny Flint might be a really untapped resource for theories for myself.
Yeah. I mean, there's all it's not a lot, but it's there, and it's one of those like, oh, and you really kind of got to dive into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then then there's other characters too, right? You talk about the Night's King, he is mentioned here as well, and what are the connections there? And I think we even get to there's some crazy Hodor stuff, right? So again, yeah, this might be a 2-part episode here, but we'll continue on. Just we have a few more minutes here. We'll continue on. So another line, just like 2 paragraphs down, Bran had told there was no way through. Bran had told them there wouldn't be. He had told them, but Jojen Reed had insisted on seeing for himself. He had a green dream, he said, and his green dreams did not lie. They don't open gates either, thought Bran. The gate the night fort guarded had been sealed since the day the Black Brothers had loaded up their mules and garrisons and departed for Deep Lake. Its iron portcullis lowered, the chains that raised and carried it off. The tunnel packed with stone and rubble, all frozen together until they were impenetrable as the wall itself. We should have followed John, Bran said when he saw it. He thought of his bastard brother often, since the night that Summer had watched him ride off through the storm. We should have found the King's Road and gone to Castle Black. So it also raises the question. I think this is something else that should really be explored. Did the Night's Watch really leave the Night's Fort because they couldn't man it anymore? Because that was supposed to be 200 years ago. Or did they leave it because of other things? Like they viewed it as haunted, or they viewed it
Oh yeah.
as,
Yeah.
because even when we hear about the Night's Watch, so 200 years ago would be like 100 AC, right? Because we're 300 AC now ish.
I
So
believe so.
200 would be 100 AC, which I believe is still in the reign of King Jaehaerys,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Maybe.
Yeah, because I think House of the Dragon's like 150. Is that right?
Wait, I'd have to do some timeline math.
But I mean, it certainly feels like the Night's Watch is still at pretty good strength.
At that
Because
point, yeah. Yeah.
right, because even when Jaehaerys goes there, let me look it up. I'll pull it up here. But even when Jaehaerys and Alicent, good Queen Alicent goes there, seems like it's pretty strong. And then even when Bloodraven goes, it feels like it's really deteriorated a lot since Bloodraven's been there in the last like 50 years. Now it feels like, we're like in deep trouble. But like because of the Mad King and Robert, right? I mean, that seems like it's where it's really kind of declined. But I mean, I would imagine that they would still be able to hold their strongest position.
You would imagine so. I love the idea that they were driven out by something else.
Right, because I mean, if this is like Ghost of the Night's King, or they say that her ghost might be there.
Yeah, very possible.
So let's I'm trying
Maybe
to
Cold Hands came by and said, "Hey, you guys got to go."
Yeah, so Alicent Targaryen goes there. She goes to the Night's Watch in 58 AC.
Okay.
She convinced Lord Commander that the Night Fort, which she found unpleasant, should. Oh, I guess she says it should be abandoned in 58 AC.
Hmm.
And then, then the new castle, Deep Lake, 7 miles to the east, was paid for by the Queen's jewels. The Night Fort was abandoned during the construction of Deep Lake. Oh, okay. So she's actually the one that says he should leave.
Hmm.
So maybe
I guess she just figured it was fine.
I guess I don't know. Her dragon couldn't even fly over the wall.
Yeah. Would she have known something that we don't know?
Maybe, I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that might be an okay place to stop, and then we can come back and do
Night's King stuff.
Night's King stuff and the rest of this, because this needs to be needs to be a 2-part episode, and I don't want to shortchange anything here.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bran chapters are so much fun. I love
Yeah,
them.
I mean, it seems like every Bran chapter now might almost have to be the 2 parts, because I mean, one, this is like, even in the audiobook sped up for me, it was over an hour. And,
oh yeah, it's long.
It's a long chapter, and 2, I don't want to shortchange anything. But I mean, that Danny Flint stuff is all super important. And
Yeah,
I don't want to shortchange any of that.
Yeah, I'll look more into that, and I might have more opinions or thoughts about it when we come back.
Yeah, because I mean, we still have Skagos to talk about. I mean, this is a big one. This is a big one. So
very big.